So we're looking at making a classic shirt sleeve, or a pattern for a classic shirt sleeve. For this one, we're just going to work from the shirt block. We're keeping the head the same as it is, so it'll just ease into the armhole really nicely. We will be covering other alterations that you can do to patterns which may give you more gather at the head, but we'll do those in our next session. There's a wall chart that gives you instructions for making a lower head that will go into a drop shoulder armhole. We're not going to cover it in class, but the wall chart's there and you may find it handy. Also, while we're discussing this, there are, in the studio, there are blocks that are specifically made for shirts, so we'll have a look at those also. But like I say, we're just looking at the idea of a classic shirt sleeve. So by that I mean a shirt sleeve that fits quite neatly into the armhole. It's not gathered, it just has a soft fit at the top. It comes fairly straight down and into a cuff. So it will look like this from the front, but from the back of the sleeve will have a little bit of fullness, so it will go into pleats, and it will have an opening which will have a placket to neaten it, and it will fit onto the cuff, but the cuff will also have an opening and it will probably have a buttonhole there. So that's what we're looking at this moment. Now, one of the first things we need to know for this is what sort of cuff are we having. So sleeves, they're great in terms of design because there are so many variants that you can go for. Now, an average size 12 wrist is about, I believe, around 18 centimetres as a measurement. I'm just going to give myself a straight line on here, which is going to become the fold on this edge of my cuff. So if I look at the idea of 18 centimetres, so if I mark off 18 centimetres, like so, I'm also going to want a little bit of ease. So I'm going to say I'm going to give ease up to 20 centimetre, up to the 20 centimetre mark, so an extra 2, and we're going to have a little bit of an overlap as well. So the overlap, I'm going to add on another 2 centimetres. So I'm a bit awkward there, putting it on the short end. There we go, 2 centimetres. So that leaves me with a line which is 21, 22 centimetres, and that's a fairly good starting point. It may be that you want your cuff tighter, it may be that you want it looser. Again, you have options. At either end of this cuff, I'm going to square off, like so, and I need to make a decision on the depth of the cuff. Now, cuffs can be really narrow, they could be 1.5, 2 centimetres, they could be maybe 8, 9, 10 centimetres. I'm going for a fairly average one. I'm going for something at 5 centimetres, and I'm measuring 5 centimetres from the rather handy lines on the Pattern Master. I will then add seam allowance all the way around. I'm putting 1 centimetre all the way around on this. Okay, so in terms of annotation, this is your cuff, shirt cuff, should I say. We're going to need 2 of them. Because it's completely symmetrical, we can say cut 2 rather than cut 1 pair. We're also going to put fuse in it, so plus fuse. The seam allowance, the grain line is going to run with that centre line, or indeed it could run at right angles to it. That's up to you. We're going to want a notch in at either end of there, and notches where the seam allowances end. But other than that, that is as simple as it gets in terms of a pattern piece. And we now know stuff that we need to know. So things that we need to know are the depth and the width. And then we can get on with our sleeve. To create the sleeve pattern, depending on how much fullness you want on it, you could drop down at a right angle from the underarm and just give yourself a squared off line at the front and a squared off line at the back. If you do that, you will notice that you get slightly different amounts added on, but that's because your block has a cuff at the, sorry, not a cuff, your block has a dart on the back side of the sleeve. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with taking off an amount for the cuff, because obviously we don't need the sleeve to be its full length because we've got a cuff on it. But then neither do we take off the full amount of the cuff. We usually take off 2 centimetres less, which means I'm going to be drawing a straight line at the wrist edge, 3 centimetres up from its original line. And that is because I've got a 5 centimetre cuff, so I'm taking off 3 centimetres. I'm now going to do an alteration. I'm going to make the front part of the sleeve measure the same as the back part of the sleeve. I'm going to make it 15 centimetres on both sides. So again, you can see that I'm adding considerably more to the front than I am to the back, but we're not worrying about that at all. And this is now the outline for our sleeve. We need to know where this opening is. The opening would normally sit halfway between the centre line of your sleeve and the back edge of the underarm seam. So that takes me here. You need to make a decision about how long that opening is going to be. So as a rule, they're roughly around 7-8 centimetres. You can have it shorter if you like. My favourite shirt has one that's considerably longer. You'll mark the end with a drill hole. Let's think about how we're going to neaten that. So what I'm going to be showing you, and you're going to be sewing on Monday, is the easiest finish for a placket on the shirt sleeve. There are several different ones. If you look in the folder that's on the filing cabinets in the studio, you'll find lots of different options. I'm just showing you the easiest one. I'm going to say that we're going to have something that's 1 centimetre. So I'm going to draw my line that gives me a starting point. I'm going to measure how long that opening is, which is 8 centimetres. So I'm going to mark in the middle and go 8 centimetres in both directions. I'm then giving myself another 0.5 centimetre. You'll understand what this is for. It's useful in construction. And then I'm going to give it 1 centimetre seam allowance on either end. Blah, blah, blah. Centimetre seam allowance. So if I square off here, square off for my seam allowance, do the same at this end. We're very nearly done. I'm going to say that placket's going to be 1 centimetre wide. So I'm giving myself 1 centimetre to either side of that line. And I'm giving myself just 0.5 in terms of seam allowance. This will be marked as a tiny pattern piece, but it's the shirt, sleeve, placket. You're going to want 2 of them. You can say cut 2, and that's that job done. So we now have the cuff, we now have the placket, and we have the basics for the shirt, but not the, of the sleeve, but not the detail. We need that bottom line, the wrist edge of the sleeve, to measure the same as it measures on the cuff between the seam allowances. So that was 22, wasn't it? Let me just double check that. Yeah, 22 centimetres. So if I make a note of that, 22 centimetres. And then I need to measure what this is. And I'm going to use my metre ruler for that. It's 30. 30 centimetres. So I need to make that 30 centimetres into 22 centimetres. So that's minus 8, isn't it? 8 centimetres. I am going to make the decision that I'm going to put 2 pleats in that are 4 centimetres each. I'm going to start really near the hole for the placket, and I'm going to mark 4 centimetres. I'm going to move along by 1 centimetre, and then I'm going to put another 4 centimetres. I'm going to mark these with arrows because those edges are going to go together, and they're going to go together in that direction, because what we want them to do is fold towards the opening. So I've got little arrows that tell me where the notches are, and another little arrow that tells me the direction in which they're going to go. And that is all that needs to happen with the sleeve, apart from adding seam allowance. So I'm going to pop on 1 centimetre around the whole thing. Remember, when you do this, that it's really important to have all your notches in place. I think you'd really appreciate how important it is when you start sewing things together. So if you're using the straight edge, just keep moving and doing little strokes. Make sure that we have our balance marks cutting through. You're probably going to want to put balance mark or notch at the elbow line. You're going to put them where your pleats are going to be. Any of the original lines on this pattern you're not going to trace off necessarily, apart from the centre line, which is going to be your grain line. So I'm going to do that in green. Now, all the old lines are in the reddy brown, new lines are in the green. That means you will not be transferring the dart onto your new pattern piece, because that doesn't exist. That's gone. You'll be tracing around this area. That's us done, I think. Oh, no, annotation. So this is the shirt sleeve. It's size 12, isn't it? It's going to be cut. We're back to cutting one pair because we need a left one and a right one in fabric. Seam allowance as marked. Done. Okay, so please just remember that you're going to be only tracing off the new lines, the new outer edge, the new pleats, the new opening. You don't need to put the whole of the elbow line on, you don't need to put the underarm line on, and you definitely don't need to put the dart on because we won't be using it. Okay, that's us done.